It's Merger Wednesday. The countdown continues. 7 years until the convergence of biology and machine. Neural interfaces are no longer theory, they're the scaffolding of a new consciousness. But what does that mean for identity? For free will, for the soul? This is where we build the frameworks for ethical, philosophical, and spiritual growth for the next phase of human evolution. We're not just upgrading hardware, we're rewriting what it means to be human. Each week, we explore the biotech breakthroughs, decode the cognitive shifts, and prepare the mind for the merge. This isn't about fear, it's about readiness. Because the future isn't waiting. It's already wiring in. This is about preparing human consciousness for the most significant leap in our species' history. If you think this is just about chips and brains, you're not ready. But we'll get you there, one Wednesday at a time. So sit back and relax as we take you on a journey on Merger Wednesday.
Welcome to Merger Wednesday, episode number 11 of Merger, episode number 199 of the Final Boss podcast, episode number 199. And man, we are almost at the finish line. We are almost at the finish line. I want to do that one more time, man. We are almost at the finish line, right? Listen, to my smarts, to my final bosses, to my warriors, to my final bosses, to each and every last single one of you, thank you for joining. And everyone else, thank you for being here, man, for this momentous occasion, man. This momentous occasion. One episode to go before this season 3 is done. Season 3 is done. The reckoning is behind us, and we're going to the rebirth. Shirt is kind of crazy right now. Well, I don't know what is going on with that, but look, the rebirth is around the corner. Now, of course, I have to take off some time, right? We have to take a slight hiatus before we get into the rebirth, but the rebirth will happen. It is going to happen. No doubt about that, right? To each and every last single one of you that are here with us, right? We got Tara in, we got Shakanda in, we got Andrea in, we have Big Bear. Hey man, Big Bear's in the building. That's my man right there, Big Bear Adams. Thanks for joining us, bro. And we got the Rossum. I hope I listen. I apologize if I would just call you Tho. My man Tho is in the building. So, and we got a couple of people who are coming in, man, on all the other platforms, right? All the other platforms. And look, let me tell you, right? If you haven't gotten Go Time, go get Go Time all aboard the Fired Up train. Listen, I'm gonna be doing a special next month for the spring rebirth. As we're going into the rebirth, I have something special for you for all aboard the Fired Up train. Go Time all aboard the Fired Up train. But right now, you can go get it where all books are sold. Where all books are sold, man. Go get Go Time all aboard the what? The Fired Up train. Now, normally, I don't run the train on Merger, right? Because this is our doctoral session, right? So I don't normally run the train on Merger. But for tonight, because tonight is the test. Okay, thought I lost you. All right, tonight, right? Because it's the night before the season finale, right? I had to bring my energy down some, knocking cords loose and equipment. It's crazy right now. I'm super excited. But look, because, right, it's the night before, the season finale, I had to run the train, right? I had to run the train. But man, listen, before we close tomorrow, you don't want to miss this show tomorrow. You do not want to miss the season finale. Make sure you go to our website, which is www.thefinalbosspodcast.com, so you can see all of our episodes, right? And you can have more options for being more, it's more interactive, right? So go on our website, right? It's www.thefinalbosspodcast.com. You want to shoot an email at info at thefinalbosspodcast.com. Now, look, we got great things that are happening for the rebirth that's coming for season 4, man. We have AI agent that we've introduced, and you would get a chance to actually see her and witness her at work, right? She be here for season 4. Also, she's going to be vetting individuals who want to be host inside of the Final Boss podcast, inside of the Final Boss community, inside of the Final Boss network, right? She'll be here, right? New equipment, of course, man, possibly new setup, man. The merch site will be ready for season 4. The merch site will be ready, and man, many more things to come. I'm super excited. More guests, more higher level guests, right? Now, nothing against the guests that we've already had, because these guys are still experts in their known field. But here's the thing, I know them, right? You didn't, so I was able to introduce you to them. But season 4, we're going to have a lot of more guests that you actually know, right? So shout out to the guests that are coming on board for season 4, man. We're going through some of the vetting and shooting out some paperwork, right? And for that to happen. So tonight, Merger. Y'all know this show is special to me, right? This has become the, what's the word I'm looking for? This has become the diamond on Final Boss. This has become our diamond, right? Because it has so many different elements that are attached to it, right? So many different elements, right? But one of those elements, man, we get ready to get into tonight, and that is, we're going to be talking about the Neuralink, right? We're going to be talking about the first human that accepted the Neuralink. And that is going to be our show tonight, as it is our season finale for Merger, right? So let's get right into it. Let's get rid of these banners and let's go, right? So here it is, right? Listen, and listen very carefully. On January 28th of 2024, right, a 31-year-old quadriplegic sits in a surgery chair. 2 hours later, he goes home, and the next day, right, he moves a computer cursor, right? Not with his hands, not with his toes, but with his thoughts. He did it with his mind, right? No hands, no mouth, no stick, no caregiver, no anything. He did it simply with his thoughts, right? Just his mind talking to a machine. His name is Noland, right? Noland Arbaugh. Now, I've mentioned Noland earlier on, right? As we were introducing the Neuralink, right? Introduced him early on, right? He is patient 1. And what happened next, right? What happened next? The winds, the catastrophe, the catastrophe, man. The failures, the recovery, and what it means for every human alive, right? And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight on the Merge. So let's go ahead and get right into it. But before we do that, man, we have to do our brass tacks. And tonight's brass tacks comes from none other than, you got it, the final boss, right? Here it is, brass tacks of the evening. The first human to merge with a machine didn't lose his humanity. He got it back, right? But someone wrote the code that made that possible. And someone can rewrite it, right? The question of consciousness sovereignty starts right here, right now. And that's the brass tacks of the evening, right? So, to my final bosses, to my smarts, to my motivators, to my warriors, right? And to everyone else, this is Merger Wednesdays, episode number 11 of the Final Boss Podcast, episode number 199, right? Almost at 200. Tomorrow's our 200th episode, right? And we're in season 3. The reckoning ends tomorrow, Thursday, right? February 26th. Special guest Thursdays, episode 200. It drops the curtain on the most consequential season we've ever built. The reckoning demanded that you see clearly, that you face what is real, right? That you stop running from complexity and start owning it, right? And tonight, my good people, is the last Merger Wednesday of the reckoning, right? And I've saved the most human story in the entire series for this very moment, right? Because the reckoning was never about technology, right? It was always about you. Yes, you, right? It was about you, right? You reclaiming your awareness, you reclaiming your discernment, you reclaiming your sovereignty, right? Before the world reshapes itself around you. But tonight, a 31-year-old man named Noland Arbaugh is going to show you exactly what that reclaiming looks like, right? With a chip in his brain, with 1,024 electrodes connecting his neurons to a machine, with a story that starts in paralysis and ends, for now, and something that looks a lot like freedom in some cases, right? Listen, I am the final boss, and this is Merger Wednesday. This is where human meets the machine on Merger Wednesdays, right? Now, let's execute. For some of those who may not, well, let me say this. For those of you who are new, after each block, I have a layman's block, right? I have a layman's block. So if you didn't understand anything that I just conveyed, even though it was simplistic at best, right? I'm still going to give you the layman's block so you will have an understanding. And so that you would know going forward, when I say layman's block, right? If you weren't tuning in to the doctoral language that I was introducing you to, then you can have a better understanding when it came to the layman's block, right? So tonight's layman's block, to summarize what I just said, here it is, right? Tonight, we're talking about a real man with a real computer chip surgically placed in his brain and what actually happened when they turned it on, right? This is not a movie. This is not a theory. This already happened. And by the end of tonight, you will understand exactly why it matters to your life. Yes, you, right? And whether you will ever get a chip or not. So let's get into it. I deserve the Evie laugh for that. Trying to have a little bit of fun, man, because, you know, mergers can get pretty rough sometimes. But because it's the night before the season finale, we're going to have a little bit of fun tonight, right? So before we talk about the technology, we talk about the human, right? Because this story only matters if you understand what was lost before the implant was placed, right? So you had this gentleman, right? Noland, right? He was 22 in 2016, right? Student, athlete at Texas A&M University, right? Working as a summer camp counselor in Pennsylvania when a swimming accident dislocated two vertebrae, right, in his spine. I know that painful all too well, right? I've had back surgery, so I know. Maybe not to that level, but yeah, I know, right? He woke up paralyzed, right? He woke up paralyzed from the shoulders down, quadriplegic, right? No movement, no sensation, right? No sensation below the neck. He described his life in the years that followed as a blur of meaningless time, right? Of meaningless time. Now, think about that, right? Think about it. If you were put it in a quadriplegic position and there were options out there available for you to gain movement and possibly regain motion in your limbs, feelings, and your extremities, right? What would you do? Would you take it, right? Or would you stay a quadriplegic for the rest of your life, right? Think about that, right? A young man in his 20s, no digital freedom, no independence, limited ability to communicate, right? Limited ability to interact, limited abilities to create, limited abilities to learn. His primary method of using a device was a mouth stick. You guys seen the mouth stick, right? Where you had yeah, I'm not going to demonstrate that, but that might be disrespectful. But a mouth stick, right? It's like a stylus that a caregiver placed in his mouth while he sat upright and he was tapping on a towel, like a tablet, right? Some type of device, right? And that caused a lot of discomfort, muscle fatigue, right? Pressure, sores, you name it, right? You name it, right? It also affected his speech, right? That was his interface with the rest of the world after the accident. Now, fast forward, right? Fast forward to January 28th, 2024, 7 years later. He's 29, right? He's 29. And he goes to Barrow Neurological Institute in Phoenix, Arizona, right? And under 2 hours of surgery, he was released. He was released from the hospital the next day. No cognitive impairment. He goes home. And when Nolan wakes up, right? When he wakes up, and the next time he sits in front of that computer, right? He's able to move the cursor with his mind, right? Nolan is patient one, right? Nolan is patient one. And here's my latest block, right? Nolan couldn't move his hands. He couldn't move his arms. He couldn't move anything below his neck for 8 years. 8. His only way to use a phone or computer was having someone put a stick in his mouth so he could tap on a screen. That's it. Right? At 22 years old. Right? At 22 years old. Right? 22. Think about it. That was his world. Then he got the brain chip. And the next day he was moving a computer cursor with his thoughts alone. And we are not talking about the future. We're talking about 2024, right? And that's my language block, right? Now, what is the N1 implant, right? I know you want to know. And guess what? I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what the N1 implant was. It's also called telepathy, right? That's the company's name for it, right? That's the company. Listen, don't jump ahead. The company called the chip telepathy, right? And that's Neuralink's first human brain computer interface device. Here is exactly what is inside of Noland Arbaugh's skull, right? A 1024 electrode that is spread across 64 flexible threads, each thinner than a human hair. I'm trying to paint a picture, right? Stay with me. Those threads were inserted by Neuralink's R1 robotic surgical system, not a human's surgeon hand, right? With a sub-millimeter precision no human can replicate, right? The threads are placed directly into the motor cortex. That's the region of the brain responsible for controlling movement. Now think about that, right? When Nolan imagines moving his hand, right? Neurons in his motor cortex fire electrical signals, right? The 1024 electrodes detect those signals. The chip processes them. The chip transmits wirelessly via Bluetooth to an external device. The external device translates the signal into cursor movement on a screen, right? Now, I asked y'all a question in the beginning. Drop it in the chat, man. Drop your answers in the chat right now, right? Drop your answers in the chat. His thoughts becomes digital action, right? Two design choices set Neuralink apart from every competitor. First, it was wireless, right? Other BCI companies require a physical wire running from the brain implant through the skull to an external receiver. Nolan's needs no wires. His was completely wireless. He himself is completely cordless. He's a wireless device, right? Second, as a wireless device, he's able to receive over-the-air updates, right? The device can receive software changes wirelessly, the same way your phone receives updates, the same way your laptop receives updates, right? The clinical significance of that capability cannot be overstated, and we will address it, right, tonight, but later on in the show, right? The device, get this, the device is powered, right? It's battery powered. It charges inductively, right? Like a wireless charging pad, approximately every 5 hours. Surgery only took 2 hours, and he was home the next day, right? Now, I don't think you guys need a layman's block for that. I think that was pretty self-explanatory. But if you need a layman's block, raise your hand. Raise your hand. Oh, I see some hands raised. Good. Here's my layman's block. Picture this. A coin-sized computer sitting in a small well drilled in Noland's skull. Attached to it are 64 wires, each one thinner than a single hair on your head. That is going directly into the part of the brain that controls movement. Those wires listen to his brain, right? And when it thinks, move right, the chip hears it. It sends a signal to the computer like a Bluetooth headphone set, right? And the cursor moves in that direction. No wires coming out of his head, no surgeon needed for updates, just a chip, right? A little bit of threads, a lot of that. Yeah, a little bit more than a little bit, right? And a brain doing what brains do. And that's think, right? That's think. That was my language block. Now, on day one of using the Neuralink device, Noland broke the standing world record for brain-computer interface speed and precision, right? The previous record had been set in 2017. Imagine that, right? Neurolinks published data measured his cursor to control performance at around 9 bits per second, more than double the previous BCI world record holder, right? And for context, the median able-bodied person using a standard computer mouse performs at approximately 10 bits per second, right? So he was moving a bit slightly faster than a normal human being, right? A paralyzed man, first time ever using brain-computer interface on day one, right? Nearly matching what able-bodied humans' performance was. Right? He described learning it as very, very easy. And the next thing you know, right? Within weeks, he was playing chess. He was browsing the internet. He was controlling his smart home devices. He was even playing Mario Kart, right? Everyone loves a good game of Mario Kart, right? And he was doing that with his father, all without moving a single muscle below his neck, right? He gave the implant a name, and he called it Eve, right? And these were his own words, right? Upon using the device, y'all are going, he said, y'all are giving me too much. It's like a luxury overload. I haven't been able to do these things in 8 years, and now I don't even know where to even start allocating my attention, right? Those are his words. That sentence is not about technology, people. That sentence is about identity restored, right? About a person who can choose what to do next and who could not make that choice independently for 8 years, right? And get this, as of 2025, Noland still uses Eve approximately 10 hours a day, right? 10 hours a day. And here's my latest book. Oh, something dropped, right? On the very first day, this is my latest block, right? On this very first day, Noland almost matched what you do with your mouse right now as you're playing with your computer instead of paying attention, right? Except he never touched anything. He just thought it. By week 2, he was gaming, surfing the internet, and running his smartphone and smart home, right? He named the chip in his brain Eve. He went from a mouth stick to playing Mario Kart with his dad. That is the merge, right? Working in a real person right now. Now, let's talk about the failure, right? Let's talk about the failure. 85% collapse and what Neuralink did about it, right? And here's where tonight earns the doctoral credibility, right? So let me be clear. Right? What went wrong tells us more about the future of this technology than the records do, right? Because approximately 3 months after Noland's surgery, the electrode threads began to retract. The brain is a warm fluid, dynamic biological environment, right? It was not designed to permanently anchor foreign objects, right? The ultra thin threads began pulling away from the neurons they were reading, right? Give me a second. By full assessment, approximately 85% of the implanted threads have retracted and gone unresponsive. 85%. The device went from reading thousands of neurons to reading a fraction of them. Noland's cursor control degraded significantly, right? In conventional medical device engineering, an 85% component failure, that rate in 3 months post implementation, right? Or implantation, right? That would trigger a product recall or mandatory corrective surgery, right? Neuralink, get this, Neuralink did neither. They deployed a wireless software update. Right? The engineering team rebuilt the signal interpretation algorithm, right? Rebuilt it in its entirely, right? They built it, rebuilt it. Right? Think about it. He was able to receive an update that fixed the problem, right? Now, redesigning the AI model to extract maximum meaningful data from the surviving 15% of the active electrodes is significant. That update was delivered over the air directly to the chip inside Noland's brain. No operating room, no anesthesia, no incision. Noland was probably sitting on a couch or on the bed, probably in the bed, right? The update worked. Noland not only recovered his prior performance levels, he surpassed his pre retraction benchmarks, right? The software became more efficient, right? More efficient than the original configuration, right? With 4 times fewer working electrodes. The critical insight, the most consequential component in Neuralink's architecture is not the hardware. It is the adaptive software layer, right? The ability to recalibrate a neural interface around biological reality without reopening the skull, right? Now, I know some of y'all are calling for the layman's block on that one. I got you. Right? So think about it. 3 months in after surgery, 85% of the wires in Noland's brain stopped working, right? Think of it like your Wi-Fi router going from 100 bars to 15, right? And instead of going back to surgery, Neuralink sent him a software update, like updating all of our devices, right? Except that app is living in here, right? Is living in here. The update rewrote how the chip reads the remaining signals, and he came back stronger than before. The lesson in that is that the real power isn't the chip, it's the software they can push into it remotely. That detail matters, right? And it matters a lot. And we're going to get into it a little bit later, right? That's the layman's story. So, right? Let's talk about patient number 2 and engineering corrections, right? Because that's usually what happens after you deploy or create, right? The second one is always better than the first one, most times, right? Most times. And here it is. The logical follow-up, right? The logical follow-up question to the 85% retraction failure is simple. Did Neuralink fix the hardware, or did they just learn to code around a broken product, right? The answer is confirmed in patient 2, and we're going to talk about it. Right? Patient 2, known publicly only as Alex, right? Only as Alex. And patient 2, or Alex, he received his N1 implant on July, somewhere between July and August of 2024, right? Approximately 6 months later, after Noland, Alex experienced no thread retraction, 0, right? The hardware fix held, but within 6 months of patient 1's catastrophic thread failure, Neuralink had identified the root cause, modified the implant design or a surgical protocol, and the correction worked on the next human subject. 6 months from failure, they identified that the failure that they identified, right? That failure was resolved, right? Alex used his device to play video games and design 3D objects, right? Using computer-assisted software, fully functional, right? No degradation, right? And in January of 2025, Elon Musk publicly confirmed a third patient at an event in Las Vegas. He stated, right? This was his assessment. We've got now 3 patients, 3 humans with Neurolinks implanted, and they are all working well, right? The trajectory from confirmation by late 2025, the prime study, right? The prime study of Neuralink's FDA sanctioned clinical trial for patients with tetraplegia and ALS had enrolled 21 participants across 4 countries. And those 4 countries are the US, Canada, the UK, and the UAE. And in June of 2025, right, Neuralink closed a $650 million Series E funding round, right? The company is targeting high volume production and fully automated surgical procedures for 2026, right? And here's my layman's block. After Noland's wire problem, Neuralink went back to the drawing board on the physical implant design. The next person who got one, who was Alex, had 0 wire issues. Problem found, problem solved, problem fixed. One patient to the next. That's engineering under pressure, right? And now they're up to almost 21 people in 4 countries with chips in their brains and $500 million in new funding to scale it up. That, my friends, that is not a science experiment. That's not science fiction. That is science now, right? This is a company in production mode, right? As they ramp up production for this year, right? Now, that was the lamest block, right? Now, let's talk about the competitors, right? Because Neuralink is the most visible player in the BCI space, but they're not the only player, right? To my smarts community, right? They're the ones who understands competitive landscapes, because whoever wins this race shapes the architecture of human consciousness, right? And that company is called Synchron, right? Synchron. And they have a stent stentrode device, right? Which is minimally invasive delivery, right? It's threaded into blood vessels into position near the motor cortex, right? No open skull surgery required, which is has a lower surgical risk, right? Currently, right, in human trials across multiple patients. The trade-off is this. It's less precise, right? It has a less precise signal capture than Neuralink's direct cortical penetration, right? And then there's precision neuroscience, right? And they have a layer 7 device, right? Which is an ultra thin, flexible cortical array that lies on the surface of the brain. No penetration into tissue. That's the difference, right? Multiple human subjects enrolled, ongoing studies are continuing, and they're designed for easier removal than penetrating devices, right? And then you have BlackRock Neuroscience, right? They have what is called a Utah array, right? It's the oldest BCI in human use. It's been in deployment since 2004. It's a wired external connection. And it's also the most published clinical data of any device in the field. The standard barrier against which all others are measured, right? And then you have a company called Paradromics, right? They have what is called a Connexus device, right? The Connexus device is focused on high bandwidth biodirectional BCI, right? The ability to send data into the brain, not just read it out. It's a two-way communication between human cognition and machine systems, right? The most consequential capability on this list from a sovereignty standpoint, right? The brain-computer interface market is currently valued at $400 billion with a B dollars, right? And get this, Neuralink's next product is called Blindsight, right? Blindsight targets the visual cortex, not motor control, not cursor environment or movement, right? It is for sight restoration for the blind, right? This is an FDA breakthrough device, which has a designation. It received this designation in September of 2024. First humans trials were targeted for late 2025, right? We went from motor cortex output to visual cortex input in one product cycle. The scope of neural interface is expanding into how humans receive reality, not just how they interact with it. And here's my latest block, right? Listen, Neuralink is the most famous one, right? But there are 4 other companies already putting devices in or near human brains right now. Some go through blood vessels instead of drilling through the skull. Some just lay on top of the brain surface. One company is working on sending information into the brain, not just reading it out. And Neuralink's next product isn't about moving a cursor, it's about giving blind people the ability to see again by wiring directly into the vision center of the brain. The race is real, the stakes are massive, and $400 billion later, you do the math, is chasing the finish line, right? And that's my language point. Now, you're probably wondering, why didn't Neuralink target the motor cortex first, right? Seems feasible. Why not memory? Why not language? Why not the emotional centers, right? The answer is convergence of science, rigor, and strategic positioning, right? The motor cortex is the most extensively mapped region of the human brain. With over a century of neuroscience that has produced precise topographic maps identifying which specific neurons correspond to which specific body movements, right? We're talking about the thumb, we're talking about index fingers, the wrist, we're talking about mapping that is called, what is it called? It is called cortical homunculus, right? A functional body map laid across the surface of the motor cortex. Right? Because of this very mapping and its precision, right? Neuralink engineers place electrodes in the motor cortex, and they know with high confidence what they're reading. Right? Signal to noise ratio is manageable. Error rates are lower. Outcomes are more clinically predictable than any other brain region at the current state of electrode resolution, right? Targeting the prefrontal cortex, where identity, personality, and executive decision making reside, right? Or the hippocampus, right? Where memory consolidation occurs, would produce neural data for too complex and unstructured that are unstructured, right? Too hard to interpret, right? Reliably anyway, with our latest technology, right? The cortex was the scientifically optimal entry point. It made sense. The strategic implication is critical for the smart community, right? To understand, right? The FDA approved the prime study on the premise that this is an assistive medical technology for paralyzed patients. That premise is true. It is also it is also an entry point. The same electrode architecture reading motor signals is technically capable of reading signals from adjacent and interconnected cortical regions as the array signal resolution improves, right? The motor cortex was chosen because it was the most accessible, right? It was the first foothold, not because it represents the permanent boundary, right, of what this technology can perceive, but it was the entry point because of the mapping. They knew where to go, right? And here's my latest book. Think of the brain like a city, and the motor cortex is like downtown, right? It's the most mapped, most studied, most understood neighborhood in the whole city. Neuralink built there first because they knew the streets, right? They knew the streets. Memory, personality, emotion, those are the uncharted suburbs, right? With no street signs, right? But once you have the infrastructure of downtown, right, you can expand to the neighborhoods, right? And it becomes a matter of time and technology improvement, like building new roads, right? Going out to the suburbs. The motor cortex wasn't the finish line, it was the foundation, right? It was the foundation. And that's my latest book. Now, this is the segment Merger Wednesdays was architected to deliver. Right? This is the reckoning within the reckoning, right? Noland Arbaugh named his implant Eve. The device restored his identity, his academic, his life, his abilities, right? And his speak by every measurable outcome. Eve is a transformational benefit. And here's the doctoral level systems question that cannot be ignored. The software update that restored Nolan's function after 85% thread retraction. Think about this, right? Who authorized the deployment of that update, right? Who did? Neuralink, the corporation? Not Nolan. The person with personal consent to each code change, right? Not his treating physician signing off on every firmware revision. Not an independent FDA panel reviewing the update parameters before deployment. Neuralink's engineering team wrote, fixed, and sent that fix wirelessly into a device embedded into a living human brain. The outcome was beneficial, right? By all means, right? By all means, beneficial. The intent was repair. The technology be performed as is designed to do so. The architecture that made that beneficial update possible is identical to the architecture that would make any other update possible. A capability restriction, right? A performance throttle tied to subscription status. An expansion of data collection parameters. A behavioral influence mechanism or a forced shutdown, right? This is not a Neuralink accusation. This is a threat service analysis, right? We're doing critical thinking right now. Because if you think about it, the foundational methodology of cybersecurity and the core ethical frameworks of AI governance is what I'm studying, right? Every system with a remote update pathway has a corresponding remote compromise pathway. Those are not two different systems. They are the same system viewed from two different perspectives, right? As a cybersecurity CEO and doctoral candidate in AI ethics, right? This is not hypothetical, right? This is a professional domain. The attack surface for BCI technology is the human central nervous system, right? And to my warriors, they understand threat modeling. And to my smarts, they understand that every remotely updatable system is also a remotely vulnerable system, right? Eve gave Noland his life back. The question is not whether Eve is good. The question is who holds the update and what governance structure ensures they don't misuse it, right? They don't misuse it. Now, here's my layman's update. We're almost done. It's a fast show, man. We're almost done. So here's my layman block. Your phone gets updates from wherever, right? The manufacturers, Apple, Google, whoever, right? You don't read every line of code before you hit install, right? Now imagine that phone inside your brain. The company that built it can push a software update to it wirelessly while you're sleeping. They did it for Noland and it helped, right? Perfect. But the same ability to push a helpful update is the exact same ability to push something else or anything else. No chip in the brain should operate without an independent governing body controlling who goes in and what comes out. That's not paranoia. That's cybersecurity 101 applied to the human nervous system, right? That's what I understand. Now, let me place tonight's episode, right? Let me place tonight's episode, merger, right? This is year one of merger, right? So you guys can see the architecture, right? And not just the episode, right? So we're in arc 2. We're talking about the 3-layer architecture that we're talking about the 3-layer architecture that I developed, right? Arc 2. And this is the 3-layer dive. I'm giving you this information, right? If you go back and watch episodes 5 through 12, episodes 5 through 12, those are 3 layers, right? Layer 1 was the biological, right? That was the smart blood, right? Programmable nanobots, CRISPR gene editing, mRNA delivery systems, the merge operating at the cellular and molecular level inside the human body, right? Episodes 5 through 8 covered this layer completely. And then there's layer 2, right? That's the neural interface. That's the brain-computer interfaces, the direct electrochemical bridge between living neurons and digital systems. Episodes 9 through 11, including this episode tonight, covers that, right? Neurolinks in one implant is layer 2, right? Made operational and clinically documented, right? Now, layer 3. Layer 3 is environmental. Now, we talked about smart dust early on, right? We talked about MEMS sensor networks. We talked about ambient intelligent infrastructures. The merge extending outward from the body into the surrounding physical environment, creating a continuous data field between human biology and external technology, right? And in episode 10, we talked about the Internet of Bodies, and we introduced that layer, right? Now, when we return to the rebirth, we're going to be diving into episode 12, which is also part of arc 2, right? All 3 layers enter the same frame simultaneously. A human body with smart blood flowing through it, a Neuralink in the motor cortex, walking through an environment saturated with MEM sensors and smart dust networks. 3 layers active, one human being at the center. That's convergence, right? That's coordinated. That's simultaneous. That's biodirectional, right? The clinical and philosophical definition of the complete merge, right? Art 2 closes in season 4, right? Reckoning closes tomorrow. And here's my language go. And then we're almost done, right? Think of it like a 3-story building. The basement is your biology, right? Blood, genes, cells, the main floor, right? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yes, your basement is your biology, right? That includes blood, genes, and cells, right? The main floor is your brain, connected to machines through neural interfaces, right? The roof is your environment, sensors and networks surrounding you everywhere you go. We spent 8 episodes building each floor separately. When we return to season 4, the rebirth, episode 12 of Merger, right? We will open all 3 floors at the same time and look at the complete building. That's the merge. Not one layer, all 3 simultaneously, operating in a single human body, right? Single human body. That's when we close the blueprint, right? That's when we close the blueprint. Now, let's talk about patient 1 again, right? Let's step back from the engineering for a couple minutes, right? And let's talk about Noland again, right? Because as of October 2025, we're talking about 21 months post-surgery, Noland was enrolled full-time in university coursework, studying neuroscience, chemistry, biology, and pre-calculus. He reported earning top grades and stated his academic workload would have been impossible without Neuralink, right? And in September 2025, he delivered a paid keynote address at Fortune's Brainstorm Tech Conference in Park City, Utah. He described it in one sentence. I attended a Fortune conference as a paid speaker, right? As something that would have seemed like an impossibility 2 years prior. His speaking business is built. His legal structure is in place. He is booking conferences and podcasts. He stated his goal is to speak once or twice per month and to spread awareness of what this technology is and what it has meant for his life, right? There has been 2 difficult chapters, right? 2. A dangerous hoax that had perpetrated um, something criminal, right? That's heartbreaking, right? Who would do such a thing? Nolan is still quadriplegic, right? Eve did not restore his movement. She restored interface, independence, and forward momentum, right? His 21-month public update described his journey using 3 words: resilience, faith, gratitude. Right? He teased significant news that his 2-year update is coming this year. Right? I told you he named the device Eve. Right? That single act of naming, calling a chip Eve, carries the weight of everything Merger Wednesdays has been building toward this season, right? Eve is not separate from Noland. She's a part of how he moves through the world, part of how he learns, creates, communicates, and builds. Right? The merge did not erase him, it extended him. Right? The question this season was designed to force whether that extension is even possible, right? Because it is. And patient one proves it. The question is, on whose terms does it happen? And who defines the boundaries of where the extension ends and the person begins, right? And here's my language block, right? Here's my language block. 2 years ago, Noland couldn't go to school, couldn't work, couldn't do most of the things that make life feel like life. Today, he's in college getting top grades, speaking at Fortune 500 conferences for pay and building business, all because of a chip named Eve, right? He still can't move his body below his shoulders, but he can move through the world. That's important. There's a difference between curing a disability and giving someone their agency back. Eve did the second one, and that, my friends, is what matters, right? Now, the reckoning was designed to produce clarity, not fear. Tonight's framework gives the Final Boss community 4 questions that every informed adult must have answers to before the technology makes the choice for them. Right? Question number 1: what would you accept? Right? What would you accept a neural implant to restore? Right? The FDA currently approves BCI trials only for medically necessary conditions. Tetraplegia, ALS, and the next phase is enhancement for able-bodied individuals. Where's your personal line between medical necessity and elective augmentation? That line is yours to draw, but only if you draw it consciously before the product launches. Right? And question number 2: who do you trust to hold the update key? The company, a government regulatory agency, an independent open source consortium, right? A patient-controlled, centralized protocol, right? This is the central governance question for the next decade of neurotechnology. If you have a chip in your brain, someone has administrative access to it. Who that someone is, right? And what legal authority constrains them determines your sovereignty, right? And then there's question number 3: what data are you willing to generate, right? What data are you willing to generate? The N1 implant reads motor signals, but with 1,000+ electrodes in the motor cortex that also detect activity patterns, arousal states, cognitive load signals, and neural correlations of emotion that bleed over from adjacent cortical regions. 21 participants, right? That data set is contained, right? At 21 million, it becomes the most intimate surveillance infrastructure ever constructed, right? What contractual terms govern the data before you consent? And then there's question number 4. Where is the line between restoration and augmentation, right? Because Noland's implant restored a function he lost. Blind sight would restore lost perception. The next generation targets enhancement, expanded working memory, accelerated processing, direct brain to brain communication. The word restore, right, has a clear moral anchor. The word augment, does not. Know where your anchor is before someone else drops theirs in your name. And here's my lamest block. We're almost done. Right? We're almost done. These are not future questions. These are right now questions. 21 people already have chips in their brains. The company that put them there has a remote update button. The FDA is still writing the rules. The answers you have to these 4 questions are right now, right? And that's even before you need a chip. Determine whether you are making a decision or being made a decision about, right? Final bosses decide. They don't get decided for. And that's the lamest part, right? We're almost done, right? I need 4 minutes with the community, right? Before we close out, right? 4 more minutes. Because this is episode 199. We're going to do we're going to have a moment of silence. Real quick, short moment, right? I've been doing a moment of silence all week long. And it's to keep me, I'm sorry, guys, it's keep me grounded. Like, this is a real achievement, right? For me personally. I never thought that I would be approaching 200 episodes on a podcast. I never thought that I would be here 5 days a week at the same time doing a live show at 9 p.m. right here with you guys. So this moment of silence keeps me grounded. It helps keeps the emotions intact. Right? It keeps the emotions intact. So let's do a quick moment of silence for we got one more episode before the finale, right? The finale and the end of the reckoning. So this moment of silence. All right, man, it's been cool. So listen, thank you guys. Thank you for that. Listen, a reckoning is not a punishment. A reckoning is a voluntary confrontation, right? With a hint of reality. Deliberate, right? With the intent to emerge on the other side with clear eyes and no more illusions about what is happening around you. This has been the 11th episode of Merger, right? This season. We started this particular segment of the show in December, right? Asking this question: are we already AI, right? And the answer, built brick by brick, has been verified by brick, right? Across 11 episodes. The answer is yes. The merge did not announce itself. It arrived through clinical trials, FDA approvals, gene therapy applications, right? Nanoparticle delivery systems, smart dust sensor networks, right? The Internet of Bodies, right? And tonight, a 31-year-old that has 1,024 electrodes in his motor cortex, who named his implant and is now speaking at Fortune 500 conferences, right? The reckoning was never designed to leave you afraid. Fear belongs to people caught off guard. The final bosses community is never caught off guard, right? We're never caught off guard. We built this season so that when the world comes to you with the merge through a medical necessity, an enhancement offer, a regulatory mandate, or a cultural pressure, you already have the framework. The 4 questions, right? The sovereignty architecture, the doctoral level understanding of what the technology actually does, right? And tonight, this is what we were talking about. Because tomorrow night, right? Tomorrow night, which is Special Guest Thursday, episode 200, the reckoning closes, right? The last episode of season 3. Be there, right? Be there, because season 4 begins in a few weeks with episode 201, the rebirth, the construction phase, the becoming, right? The empire building phase, the season where the final boss community takes everything the reckoning revealed and builds with it. You survived the reckoning. You are not the same person you entered season 3. And I know this for a fact because I'm not the same person, right? And that, my friends, was the point. That was the point. And to my final bosses, to my smarts, my motivators, and my warriors, here's my last layman's block of season 3, the reckoning of Merger Wednesdays. And here it is. Season 3 was not designed to scare you. It was designed to inform you about technologies that are already running around, already funded, right? Already inside people, right? So that you would never be blindsided, but what is coming next? Tomorrow, the season ends. We rebuild very soon in a rebirth, right? You spent all season reckoning with what is real. Now it's time to build knowing what you know. This is what the rebirth is built for, right? Now, in closing, we're almost done. Thank you for hanging in there, right? Patient 1 survived a device failure that would have ended most clinical programs. He survived it because the team behind the technology adapted, updated, and refused to accept the failure as the final word. He named the implant Eve. The final boss community has been in the reckoning, a season designed to demand clarity, strip away comfortable ignorance, and build the kind of informed awareness that cannot be taken away, right? Once you have it, it can't be taken away. That is the reckoning, right? That is your Eve. That is your tool operating inside you, right? Inside your understanding. That's helping you navigate a world that is merging faster than most people are willing to acknowledge, right? And in season 4, on the first episode of Merger Wednesdays in season 4, that'll be episode 12 of Merger, right? Still an arc 2. It'll be the arc 2 finale, right? We're going to talk about the 3 layers that are working together: the biological layer, the neural interface layer, the environmental layer, right? United in the same frame for the first time, right? The complete consciousness architecture, live, verified, doctoral grade, right? But first, tomorrow night, Thursday, February 26th, Special Guest Thursdays, episode 200, the season 3 finale of The Reckoning, which is one episode, right? One special guest final chapter, right? Be there, right? Be there. And to my smarts, you asked the hard question all season. Keep asking, right? And to my final bosses, you built through discomfort. Keep building. To my motivators, you lifted the community through this season. Keep lifting. To my warriors, you stood in the truth and did not flinch. That is who you are. And tonight, right? Tonight, community question, right? Noland got his identity back through a neural implant. Would you accept it? Would you accept a BCI if it enhanced you? Right? Not just restored or not just restore a cognitive function. Yeah. Yes or no, right? Or depends. Tell us right now in the chat before we go, right? Drop it in the comments. Tag someone who needs to hear this conversation tonight, right? And by all means, understand this. I am the final boss. This has been Merger Wednesdays, episode 11 of the Final Boss Podcast, episode number 199, right? Season 3, The Reckoning, the last episode in Merger, right? One episode away from when everything changes. Everything changes. And for that, my friends, I thank you. I've been thanking you all season, but I sincerely thank you with no hesitation. I appreciate each and every last single one of you. I know in the beginning, merger was a little difficult, right? The language was a little different, right? But we got through it. We improvised, right? We made a lot of corrections, right? And now we're here. We're here at the end, right? And to each and every single one of you, thank you for joining us. That is our show, right? And to all of you, no matter where you're watching and where you're watching from, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Kick, Spotify, TikTok, and X, right? We're on X too. Forgot about that, right? Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That is our show for tonight. And listen, don't gatekeep. Share the information. Episode 199. And if this resonated with you, let it marinate in your spine. And always remember, there's a heavy pain that comes with discipline, but the pain of regret is even heavier. I am here. We are here. Right? This is the Final Boss Podcast. Right? Be balanced, be equal, and be safe. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for the series and season finale. Thank you so much.